In 2004, Blockbuster operated more than 9,000 stores, employed 84,000 people, and shaped the rhythms of everyday life on 6 continents. Yet within a decade, almost all of it would quietly vanish. Most people blame digital disruption, but the reality is more unsettling. This collapse was engineered, one efficient decision at a time. How does a perfectly optimized system become its own undoing? The answer begins with scale and ends with a lesson few industries have learned. At the height of its reach in 2004, Blockbuster was not just a company, it was a fixture in daily life. 9,094 stores spread across 6 continents formed a network so dense that in many cities the nearest Blockbuster was closer than the nearest grocery store. 84,300 employees wore the blue and yellow uniform, restocking shelves, scanning barcodes, and offering recommendations to families and teenagers alike. On Friday nights, parking lots filled as customers lined up to browse new releases and old favorites. Each transaction a small ritual repeated millions of times a week. The scale was staggering. In the United States alone, there were more Blockbuster locations than McDonald's. The company's footprint extended into suburbs, city centers, and small towns, with each store carrying thousands of VHS tapes and later DVD discs, organized, cataloged, and replenished by a logistics system built for speed and consistency. This was not a patchwork of franchises, it was a centralized operation managed down to the minute. With every title tracked, every late fee calculated, every inch of shelf space accounted for. The numbers tell a story of ambition executed with precision. At its peak, Blockbuster handled tens of millions of rentals each week. New stores opened at a pace that once averaged nearly 1 every day. The company's brand was so embedded in American culture that a trip to Blockbuster became a weekly habit, woven into the rhythm of family routines and social plans. For many, the blue membership card was as familiar as a library card or a driver's license. This reach was not accidental. It was engineered, built on a formula that could be replicated, scaled, and managed from a central headquarters. Blockbuster's ubiquity was its defining feature, a testament to the power of systems and the belief that the future could be shaped by expanding just a little further, one store at a time. A network of more than 9,000 stores once offered Blockbuster a reach no competitor could match. But the very system that powered its dominance also created a kind of corporate gravity, one that would grow heavier with every new store opening. Each location required a long-term lease, a staff, and a steady flow of inventory. Decisions about where to expand, how many stores to cluster in a single city, and how to standardize operations were made with the confidence of a company that believed more was always better. In major metro areas, it was common for multiple Blockbuster stores to operate within a mile of each other, each one bound by contracts that could stretch for years. The logic was simple. Ubiquity meant convenience, and convenience meant market share. But this approach left little room for flexibility. Once a lease was signed, it became a fixed cost, unaffected by changes in customer traffic or shifts in technology. If demand dropped at one location, the company could not simply walk away. Closing a store meant paying penalties, writing off sunk costs, and sometimes losing whatever local market presence remained. The system was designed for expansion, not contraction. This rigidity ran deeper than real estate. Inventory purchasing, employee training, and logistics all operated on the assumption that every store would remain profitable, or at least necessary, for years to come. Even as consumer habits began to shift, the company's structure made rapid adaptation nearly impossible. The same centralized control that enabled precision in the 1990s became a barrier to reinvention as the 2000s unfolded. The lone surviving Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon now stands as a reminder of what once seemed unbreakable, a single outpost where the blue and yellow sign still hangs while thousands of other locations have faded into memory. The scale that once promised security had, in the end, become a source of immobility. The system was optimized for a world in which change was slow and predictable. When that world vanished, the weight of Blockbuster's own success left it unable to move. On October 19, 1985, a new kind of video store opened its doors in Dallas, Texas. The man behind it, David Cook, was not a movie industry veteran or a retail executive. He was a computer software entrepreneur who had spent years building database systems for the oil and gas sector. Cook's background shaped every detail of the first Blockbuster store, from its layout to its underlying technology. Unlike the cramped, chaotic video shops that dotted strip malls across America, Blockbuster's debut location offered a different experience. The store carried 8,000 VHS tapes and 2,000 beta tapes, an inventory that dwarfed the typical selection at independent rental shops. Each title was cataloged and tracked using a custom-built database, allowing for precise inventory management and fast checkouts. The aisles were wide, the shelves low, and every section was organized for easy browsing. Customers could find what they wanted quickly, and staff could restock and manage the collection with a level of efficiency that was rare in the industry at the time. Cook saw the home video rental business not as a series of one-off transactions, but as a system that could be engineered, scaled, and replicated. At the core was data. Every rental, every return, every late fee was tracked and analyzed. This mindset set Blockbuster apart from the beginning. The store's computer system didn't just process rentals, it generated reports on the most popular titles, flagged inventory shortages, and even predicted which genres would drive demand on weekends. The initial store was designed to be more than a neighborhood convenience. It was a prototype for expansion, built with replication in mind. Every process, from customer sign-up to tape returns, was standardized and documented. The blue and yellow branding, the staff uniforms, even the placement of the candy racks by the checkout, each detail was chosen for consistency and scalability. Cook's approach was methodical, treating each store as a node in a network rather than a standalone business. This level of intentionality attracted attention. Investors and competitors took note of Blockbuster's operational discipline and its ability to manage a vast inventory with minimal confusion. The system Cook built made it possible to open new locations quickly, using the same database-driven approach to keep each store running smoothly. The foundation was set for a company that could grow far beyond its Dallas origins, not by accident but by design. The blueprint was clear: engineer the system first, then scale it as far as demand would allow. Wayne Huizenga saw something in Blockbuster that few others recognized. He saw a blueprint for domination hidden in plain sight. When he took control in 1987, the chain had just 19 stores. Within a year, Blockbuster was opening new locations at a pace that seemed almost impossible, nearly one store every single day. This was not growth for growth's sake. Each store followed the same formula, built on Cook's original systems, but now deployed with the speed and confidence of an industrial operation. The process was so refined that entire teams specialized in site selection, store build-out, and rapid employee training. Real estate deals were negotiated in clusters, saturating neighborhoods and outpacing every rival. Acquisition became another tool in the arsenal. Blockbuster absorbed regional competitors like Major Video, rolling up hundreds of stores in a single transaction. This strategy did not just add locations, it removed alternatives, leaving customers with fewer choices and reinforcing Blockbuster's presence as the default option for home video. The company's scale made it a first call for landlords and a preferred partner for movie studios, who saw in Blockbuster a reliable channel for their titles. Legal battles shaped the landscape as well. In 1989, Nintendo tried to block the rental of its video games, arguing that it undermined sales and violated copyright. Blockbuster fought back in court and in Congress, ultimately winning the right to rent games alongside movies. The victory opened a new stream of revenue and drew in a younger audience, further widening the company's moat. Game rentals became a staple of the Blockbuster experience, setting it apart from smaller shops and cementing its appeal to families. Huizenga's approach was unapologetically aggressive. He described Blockbuster's expansion as a land grab, racing to occupy the best corners before competitors could react. The company invested heavily in branding, making the blue and yellow sign a symbol recognized across the country and eventually around the world. By 1992, Blockbuster had more than 2,800 stores, up from fewer than 105 years earlier. The numbers were not just impressive, they were engineered, the result of processes designed to eliminate friction and maximize replication. The result was a network so dense that in many cities no other video store could hope to compete on convenience or selection. Blockbuster's scale became its shield, discouraging new entrants and locking in preferred terms with distributors. The company's legal and operational victories built a moat that few could cross. Each new store opening, each acquisition, each court win. The effect was cumulative, reinforcing a system that seemed built to last forever. The tactics of blitz expansion were not random. They were the product of deliberate choices executed with discipline and speed. Blockbuster's financial engine ran on a system that turned friction into profit. Each rental was more than a simple transaction. It was governed by a network of contracts, fees, and incentives that shaped the entire experience. The company's revenue-sharing agreement with studios, introduced in the late 1990s, set the terms. For every dollar spent on a rental, Blockbuster kept 60 cents and the studio received 40 cents. This arrangement allowed stores to stock more copies of new releases without the heavy upfront costs that had once limited selection. Shelves filled with dozens of the latest hit, each copy feeding the same split with the studios. The more times a tape or disc was rented, the more both parties earned. But the real lever was not the rental fee, it was the penalty for returning a movie late. By 2000, late fees generated $800 million annually, accounting for 16% of Blockbuster's total revenue. These fees were not an afterthought. They were built into the system, reinforcing a cycle where the cost of forgetting a due date could easily double or triple the original price of a rental. For the company, this was a structural advantage. For customers, it was a source of frustration, but the alternatives were limited. The entire model depended on these moments of friction, as millions of families paid $1 a day for each overdue title. Blockbuster's inventory model amplified this effect. With the upfront cost of tapes and discs reduced by the revenue-sharing deal, stores could carry deep stock on new releases, ensuring that almost anyone who walked in on a Friday night could walk out with the movie they wanted. This volume, in turn, created more opportunities for late returns, more fee revenue, and a stronger negotiating position with studios. The system was optimized for repeat visits and predictable penalties. As long as rentals flowed through physical stores, and as long as customers accepted the risk of late fees, Blockbuster's revenue machine was secure. But this security came with a hidden cost. The company's cash flow was structurally tied to the very friction that new digital competitors were designed to eliminate. The moment late fees or in-person returns became optional, the foundation of Blockbuster's profit model began to erode. In 1994, Blockbuster became part of Viacom in a deal valued at $8.4 billion. That acquisition was not just a financial transaction, it represented a shift in priorities and incentives. As a division inside one of the world's largest media conglomerates, Blockbuster gained access to new resources and negotiating power, and it also became subject to the strategic logic of a parent company focused on content ownership and distribution. The new corporate structure encouraged Blockbuster to deepen its defensive moat. Exclusive content became a central strategy. In 1997, Warner Brothers offered Blockbuster a limited-time exclusive on new DVD releases, a window during which no other retailer could rent the latest movies. This deal reinforced Blockbuster's position as the first stop for new releases, particularly as DVD adoption accelerated across American households. For customers, the promise was simple. If you wanted to see the latest movie on DVD before it was available anywhere else, Blockbuster was the only option. John Antioco, who took over as chief executive officer in 1997, expanded this approach. Under his leadership, Blockbuster created DEJ Productions in 1998 and acquired over 200 films to provide exclusive rental content before those titles reached broader retail channels. These moves were designed to keep customers coming into stores and to give Blockbuster leverage in negotiations with studios. The company's scale allowed it to secure better terms and unique inventory, making it difficult for smaller competitors or new entrants to match the breadth or timeliness of its offerings. The logic behind these choices was clear: control the content, control the customer. By locking down exclusive rental windows and producing its own films, Blockbuster sought to insulate its stores from the threat of commoditization. These strategies were not just about short-term profit, they were about reinforcing a system built for physical retail, where presence on the shelf and access to the latest titles were the keys to repeat business. But each layer of exclusivity and content ownership also reinforced Blockbuster's commitment to the store-based model. The incentives drove the company to double down on physical distribution even as technology began to shift the landscape. The moats that once protected the business from rivals now shaped the path forward, influencing every major decision as the digital era approached. Behind every episode lies a process that rarely makes its way into the spotlight. Research begins long before a single word is written or a voice is recorded. It starts with stacks of archival documents, old financial filings, faded letters, government records, and news clippings that have been tucked away for decades. Sometimes the only way to piece together a story is to cross-reference data from sources that were never meant to be compared. A single date in a ledger might lead to a week spent tracking down its significance, connecting it to decisions made in boardrooms or on factory floors. The work is slow, deliberate, and often solitary. Fact-checking means returning to the original source, not just accepting what has been repeated over time. Every claim is weighed against the evidence, every narrative thread pulled until it either unravels or holds firm. The editing process is just as careful. Sentences are rewritten for clarity, timelines are checked and rechecked, and the goal is always to respect the complexity of the subject without losing sight of the human stories at its core. Production does not end with research and writing. Narration is recorded in quiet spaces, sometimes late at night, when the world is still and the details can be given the attention they deserve. Sound is balanced to avoid distraction, and each section is arranged to build understanding rather than overwhelm with information. There are no shortcuts, only the steady work of assembling facts, shaping them into a story, and presenting them with honesty. Support for this kind of work is never taken for granted. Each subscription is a signal that careful storytelling matters, that there is value in going beyond surface-level summaries. It makes possible the hours spent in archives, the patience required to untangle complex systems, and the commitment to accuracy that runs through every episode. For those who appreciate a calm, thorough approach, one that aims to clarify rather than sensationalize, this support is what keeps the channel alive. It is received with genuine gratitude. If you value deep, research-heavy documentaries like this, consider subscribing. These videos take significant time, sourcing, and production to create, and your support directly makes future episodes possible. Blockbuster's first attempt to answer the digital threat arrived in 2004. The company launched Blockbuster Online, a DVD by mail service designed to compete directly with Netflix. At its core, the new platform offered customers the ability to browse, reserve, and receive DVD discs without stepping inside a store. By the end of 2006, Blockbuster Online had signed up 2.2 million subscribers, an impressive number on paper, but less than a third of Netflix total at the same point. Company leadership viewed the online service not as a replacement for the store experience, but as an extension, one more way to capture customers already loyal to the brand. This hybrid approach was further complicated by the introduction of the Total Access program. Subscribers could return mailed DVD discs to any Blockbuster store and exchange them for free in-person rentals. The idea was to use the existing retail footprint as an advantage, creating a seamless bridge between digital convenience and physical immediacy. But the economics were punishing. For every exchange, Blockbuster lost an estimated $2, an unsustainable drain at scale. By 2007, Total Access had attracted 3 million subscribers, but marketing costs and negative margins produced a net loss of $46.4 million in a single quarter. In 2005, Blockbuster made a dramatic policy change. Late fees, long a source of customer frustration and a key pillar of company profit, were eliminated. The move was intended to win back goodwill and blunt the appeal of Netflix's no-fee promise. Instead, it created a sudden gap in revenue. Late fees had generated around $800 million a year, accounting for 16% of total income as recently as 2000. With the fees gone, Blockbuster was forced to rely on rental volume to fill the void, but the numbers never recovered. The company's own financial filings show that the elimination of late fees coincided with a steep decline in profitability. Each of these decisions, launching an online service, removing late fees, and building a hybrid model, addressed a specific pain point but failed to solve the underlying problem. Blockbuster's scale, once an asset, now amplified every misstep. The company was caught between the need to protect its existing business and the pressure to adapt to new consumer expectations. Every partial fix introduced new costs or eroded old sources of cash. The result was a system under growing strain, where experiments meant to regain relevance only deepened financial pressure. By 2006, the atmosphere inside Blockbuster's boardroom had shifted from confidence to confrontation. Activist investor Carl Icahn, known for his aggressive campaigns, began acquiring shares and demanding seats on the board. Icahn's central argument was simple: executive compensation was too high, and the company's digital experiments were draining resources from the core business. The tensions escalated as Icahn secured 3 board seats, pushing for greater oversight and a return to profitability. John Antioco, CEO since 1997, found himself at odds with the new power dynamic. His vision for a digital future, which included costly investments in online rentals and the Total Access program, clashed with Icahn's insistence on protecting the traditional retail model. The debate was not just about strategy, it was about incentives. Antioco's compensation, which reached $51.6 million in 2004, became a lightning rod for criticism. Icahn argued that leadership was being rewarded for growth that no longer existed, while the company's debt load and shrinking margins threatened its survival. In April 2007, Antioco left the company, departing with a severance package after a decade at the helm. The board turned to Jim Keyes, former CEO of 7-Eleven, to lead Blockbuster through its next phase. Keyes promised discipline and a renewed focus on the store network. He downplayed the threat posed by Netflix and Redbox, insisting that Blockbuster's retail presence and brand loyalty remained its strongest assets. In interviews, Keyes dismissed digital competitors, saying that Netflix did not really have or do anything that Blockbuster could not or did not already do itself. Under Keyes, Blockbuster's strategy veered sharply away from digital transformation. Investments in online and hybrid services were scaled back. The company doubled down on in-store promotions and attempted to squeeze more value from its existing footprint. But the numbers told a different story. Revenues continued to fall as customers migrated to mail order and streaming services. Debt obligations, many dating back to the Viacom era and the 2004 spin-off, became impossible to service with declining cash flow. Every effort to stabilize the business, including cost-cutting, store closures, and renegotiated leases, proved insufficient against the larger forces at play. The company's fixed costs, once justified by scale, now acted as an anchor. On September 23, 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy protection. The legal filing listed over $1 billion in debt and acknowledged that the company could no longer meet its obligations. The collapse was not sudden, but the result of years of compounding pressures, strategic missteps, leadership turnover, and the relentless shift in consumer behavior. The boardroom battles, the changes in leadership, and the inability to align incentives with the demands of a new marketplace all converged in this final act. What had once been the world's largest video chain was now officially insolvent. Forecasts inside Blockbuster headquarters pointed to years of steady transition. Executives tracked broadband adoption and DVD player sales, but their models assumed time was on their side. In reality, the window for adaptation was closing far faster than anyone inside the company realized. Broadband internet, once a luxury, spread through American homes with a speed that outpaced internal projections. In 2000, only 3% of U.S. households had high-speed connections. By 2005, that number had jumped to nearly 1 in 3. Within another 5 years, broadband reached more than 2/3 of homes. This shift was not gradual, it was exponential, driven by falling prices, cable bundling, and a growing appetite for digital media. The infrastructure that made streaming possible arrived sooner and at greater scale than most industry veterans had predicted. At the same time, the DVD format achieved household saturation in record time. In 2000, fewer than 1 in 10 American homes owned a DVD player. By 2005, 3 out of 4 did. Prices dropped, retail giants pushed aggressive holiday bundles, and the disc replaced the tape almost overnight. For Blockbuster, this meant their inventory model, optimized for managing deep VHS stock, became obsolete just as DVD mail-order services hit the mainstream. Netflix started with only a few 100,000 subscribers in 2000, reached 3 million by 2004, and more than 7 million by 2007. The subscription model, once a novelty, was now a baseline expectation. Inside Blockbuster, adaptation was always framed as incremental. The online rental service was designed as an add-on, not a replacement. Store traffic was expected to remain stable as digital slowly gained ground, but the pace of change outside the company outstripped every internal forecast. Each attempt to pivot, a new policy, a hybrid program, a round of cost-cutting was already behind the curve by the time it launched. The compressed timeline left no margin for error. What might have been a manageable transition if spread over a decade became a race that Blockbuster was never equipped to win. The company size, once its greatest advantage, now magnified every miscalculation. Lease obligations, fixed staffing, and inventory commitments locked Blockbuster into a model that could not shrink as fast as demand shifted. Even as executives debated strategy, the core assumptions behind their forecasts, how fast broadband would spread, how quickly DVD would become universal, how rapidly customers would embrace subscriptions, were being overtaken by events outside their control. The result was a series of partial fixes that never addressed the scale or speed of the underlying transformation. Blockbuster did not ignore the future. It simply misjudged how quickly the present would disappear. The company logic, shaped by years of dominance, proved fatally out of step with the market new tempo. By the time the full scope of the change was visible, the window for a meaningful pivot had already closed. Streaming platforms dominate, but the risks that doomed Blockbuster, rigid systems, misaligned incentives, and missed signals persist in every industry. According to Deloitte, over 88% of Fortune 500 companies from 1955 no longer exist. Market dominance offers no guarantee of survival when reality shifts. The lesson is not about nostalgia, it is about vigilance. Every system is optimized for a world that is already changing. If this perspective resonates, consider subscribing for more stories behind vanished empires.